At tea dinner, Mom handed my sister the keys to a $120,000 Tesla and said, "For graduating?" Then she turned to me, "Next month you owe $1,200 in rent." I packed quietly and left that night. 6 months later. 35 missed calls from family. I'm Sarah Marie Carter, 26, and I never thought I'd cut my family off. But that night, I did. At our Hartford dinner table, Mom slid a velvet box toward my sister. She opened it, keys to a Tesla worth $120,000 gleaming like her smug grin. For graduating, Mom beamed as if my sister, 22, had just won a Nobel Prize. I sat there, fork frozen, stomach twisting. I'd worked endless hours as an office assistant, paid the family's bills, even balanced Dad's books when his business collapsed. And my sister, she got a free ride through college and now this car. Then Mom turned to me. Her smile gone. "Sarah, next month, you owe $1,200 rent." Dad sipped his wine in silence. My sister twirled the keys. My heart pounded. This wasn't just unfair, it was betrayal. I didn't argue. I stood chair scraping and walked to my room. Hands shaking, I packed a bag, laptop, clothes, phone. I grabbed the keys to my old Honda and drove to my best friend Alyssa's. No, goodbye. The Tesla mocked me from the driveway. What about you if your family treated you this way? Would you stay or walk away? Share your thoughts in the comments. The next morning, I opened my laptop on Alyssa's couch, my coffee cold beside me. I couldn't shake that nagging feeling from last night. Those bank statements. I'd seen months ago helping Dad with his real estate business. I'd been his unofficial bookkeeper for years, balancing accounts when his deals went south. I paid utility bills, covered Avery's textbooks, even chipped in for Mom's car repairs. But that $1,200 rent demand, it felt like a knife twisting deeper. I logged into the old joint account I'd used for Dad's business. My access was still active. Probably because he thought I'd never check. I scrolled through transactions, my heart racing. There it was, a withdrawal of $50,000 dated 3 years ago when Avery started at Yale. Another $20,000 a year later. Then smaller chunks adding up to nearly $200,000. The timing matched Avery's tuition payments, her new laptop, her summer trips. My stomach churned. This wasn't just favoritism, this was theft. I grabbed my phone and searched for James Paul Bennett, Grandpa William's old financial advisor. I'd met him once years ago when I was a kid tagging along to Grandpa's office. He was retired now, but his number was still listed. I dialed, my hands trembling. "James Bennett," a calm voice answered. "Hi, this is Sarah Marie Carter, William Carter's granddaughter." I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to ask about something Grandpa set up for me." A pause. "Sarah, I've been expecting your call." James said, "Your grandfather left a trust fund for you, $200,000 meant for your education and future. Your father Brian was the trustee." My breath caught. A trust fund. For me, I pressed him for details, my mind racing. James explained how Grandpa William had set it up when I was 10 before he passed. Brian had full control as trustee, and the withdrawals I'd seen. They weren't authorized for Avery's expenses. James had a letter from Grandpa outlining his wishes. "I can send it to you," he offered. "Please," I said, my voice tight. "Email it now." Within minutes, my inbox pinged. I opened the scanned letter, Grandpa's neat handwriting filling the screen. "To my dearest Sarah," it began. "This trust is for your dreams, college, a home, a life you build on your own terms. Don't let anyone take it from you." My eyes stung. Grandpa had seen it coming. Dad's favoritism, Mom's silence, Avery's endless rewards. He tried to protect me. I leaned back, staring at Alyssa's ceiling. All those years I'd worked overtime, skipped vacations, poured money into the family, and Dad had been siphoning off my future to fund Avery's. I thought of Mom's voice at dinner, so casual about that rent demand. Did she know? Did Avery? My phone buzzed, another text from Mom. I swiped it away. They didn't get to explain this away. Alyssa walked in, holding 2 mugs of fresh coffee. "You okay?" she asked, sitting beside me. "No," I admitted, showing her the letter. "Dad took money that was mine. $200,000. Her eyes widened. "What are you going to do?" I clenched my jaw. Find out how much he took, and make him pay it back. Alyssa nodded, squeezing my shoulder. You've got this. Whatever you need, I'm here. I spent the rest of the day digging deeper, pulling bank records, cross-checking dates. Every withdrawal was a punch money for Avery's dorm. Her car insurance, even a spring break trip to Cancun. My money. Grandpa's gift to me. I wasn't just angry. I was done being the family's doormat. James promised to send more documents, account statements, proof of Brian's mismanagement. I thanked him, my voice firm. This wasn't over. I closed my laptop, my resolve hardening. Dad thought I'd stay quiet, keep playing the good daughter. He was wrong. That afternoon I called James again. My hands were steady now, but my heart wasn't. I needed details, hard proof of what Brian had done. Tell me everything about the trust, I said, my voice firm. James didn't hesitate. Your grandfather set up a $200,000 trust for you in 2008 when you were 10, he said. It was for your education, maybe a house someday. Brian as trustee had access, but no right to redirect funds. He sent me a folder of documents, bank statements, trust agreements, all stamped with Grandpa William's signature. The record showed withdrawals: $50,000 for Avery's Yale tuition in 2022, $20,000 for her study abroad in Paris, $10,000 for her car payments. Smaller sums covered her phone upgrades, even a ski trip last winter. Nearly the entire trust was gone. I gripped my phone, my knuckles white. Brian hadn't just favored Avery, he'd erased my future to fund hers. I'd spent years working late shifts, paying family bills, thinking I was keeping us together. I'd covered groceries when Dad's deals tanked, sorted his paperwork, even paid for Avery's textbooks, and this was my reward. Nothing. I paced Alyssa's living room, my anger surging. He used my money. I told Alyssa, slamming the documents on her coffee table. Every cent Grandpa left for me went to Avery. Alyssa scanned the papers, her face pale. This is disgusting. Your dad planned this. I nodded, my jaw tight, and Mom never said a word. She let it happen. She hugged me. Her voice fierce. You don't deserve this, Sarah. You've got to fight back. Her words lit a fire in me. I'd been the family's fixer, the one who stayed quiet, worked hard, asked for nothing. But Brian had crossed a line. Grandpa's trust was my shot at a degree. A home. A life I'd earned. I wasn't letting him get away with this. I thought of Avery driving her Tesla, probably clueless about where the money came from. Did she know? Did she care? Mom's texts kept coming, 3 more since yesterday, all unread. I didn't want her excuses. I wanted justice. Brian thought I'd roll over like always. He was wrong. I opened my laptop, searching for a lawyer in Hartford. Stephen Thomas Walsh's name popped up, a trust and estate specialist, with a reputation for winning tough cases. His website showed a sharp-eyed man in his late 30s promising to hold fiduciaries accountable. Client reviews called him relentless. That's what I needed. I dialed his office, my pulse steady now. Walsh Law Office, a woman answered. This is Sarah Carter, I said. I need to speak with Stephen Walsh about a trust fund my father misused. She booked me for a consultation tomorrow morning. I hung up, my resolve solid. Brian had taken what was mine, but I was taking it back. Grandpa's trust wasn't just money, it was his belief in me. I wasn't letting that go. The next morning I drove to Stephen's office in downtown Hartford. His building was sleek, all glass and sharp angles, but I barely noticed. My focus was on the folder in my bag, James's documents, proof of Brian's betrayal. I walked into Stephen Thomas Walsh's office, my hands steady, but my heart racing. Stephen greeted me, his handshake firm. Sarah Carter. Right. Tell me what's going on. I laid out everything: Grandpa's trust, the $200,000, Brian's withdrawals for Avery's tuition, trips, and car. I handed him the bank statements and trust agreement. My father used my money. I said, my voice cold. I want it back. Stephen flipped through the documents, his expression sharp. This is a clear violation, he said, leaning back. As trustee, Brian had a legal duty to manage the trust in your interest, redirecting funds to your sister without your consent. That's breach of fiduciary duty. We can sue for restitution, maybe even penalties. I nodded, my resolve hardening. What do we need to do? He outlined the process: file a lawsuit, demand an accounting of the trust, and seek a court order to recover the funds. We'll need every document you have, he said. Bank records, the trust agreement, anything showing Bryant's actions. I agreed, handing over copies of everything James sent. Stephen promised to draft the complaint and file it within days. This won't be quick, he warned. But you have a strong case. Back at Alyssa's, I threw myself into my online graphic design course. I'd been working on a logo project for a mock client, tweaking fonts and colors late into the night. It kept me grounded, a reminder I was building something for myself. My laptop pinged with emails from my professor praising my latest submission. "You've got talent, Sarah," she wrote. I smiled for the first time in days. My phone buzzed constantly, 5 calls from Mom, 2 from Brian, even 1 from Avery. I let them go to voicemail. Mom's messages were vague, asking me to come home and talk. Brian's were sharper, demanding to know why I was causing trouble. Avery's was just her name, like that was enough to pull me back. I deleted them all. They didn't get to guilt me now. Alyssa noticed my phone lighting up. "They're not giving up," she said, pouring me tea. "They can try all they want." I replied, my voice flat. "I'm done with their excuses." She grinned. "That's my girl. Keep your eyes on the prize." I spent the next week gathering more evidence. James sent additional records, emails from Brian requesting trust withdrawals, claiming they were for family expenses. Every email was a lie tied to Avery's tuition or trips. I forwarded them to Stephen, who called to confirm he'd filed the lawsuit. "We're demanding full restitution," he said. 200,000 plus interest in legal fees. I kept up with my design course, submitting a new project, a website mock-up for a local bakery. My professor's feedback was glowing, pushing me to refine my portfolio. I wasn't just fighting for Grandpa's money. I was fighting for the life he'd wanted for me. Late at night, I'd sketch ideas for my future, maybe a freelance business, my own apartment. Brian's actions had taken years from me. But I wasn't letting him take my dreams. My phone buzzed again, another call from Mom. I silenced it, my focus on Stephen's email. Outlining our next steps: discovery, depositions, a court date in a few weeks. Brian would have to answer for what he'd done. I wasn't backing down. 3 weeks later, I sat in the Hartford courtroom, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. The room was stark, all wood panels and fluorescent lights, but my focus was on Stephen standing at the plaintiff's table. He adjusted his tie, ready to present my case. Across the aisle, Brian sat with his lawyer, his face a mask of defiance. Mom was next to him, her eyes darting toward me. Avery was absent, probably too busy with her Tesla. Stephen began, his voice steady. "Your Honor, my client Sarah Carter was the sole beneficiary of a $200,000 trust established by her grandfather William Carter in 2008. Her father Brian Carter, as trustee, diverted these funds to benefit his other daughter without Sarah's consent. He held up a stack of documents, bank statements, trust agreements, emails from Brian requesting withdrawals for Avery's tuition, study abroad, and car payments. These records show a clear breach of fiduciary duty." The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, leaned forward, scanning the evidence. Stephen continued, detailing each withdrawal: $50,000 for Yale, $21,000 for Paris, $10,000 for Avery's car insurance. "Sarah received nothing," he said. "She worked to support her family, unaware her own inheritance was being misused." Brian's lawyer stood, adjusting his glasses. "My client acted in the family's best interest," he claimed. "The trust was used for household expenses, not just one individual." Brian nodded, his jaw tight, avoiding my gaze. Stephen countered, presenting an email from Brian to James, dated 2022, requesting funds for Avery's education. "This wasn't for the family," Stephen said. "It was targeted, deliberate, and illegal." I glanced at Mom. Her hands twisted in her lap, her face pale. She mouthed, "Sarah, I'm sorry," but I looked away. Her apologies were too late. I'd spent years covering their bills, fixing their messes while they gave Avery everything. This wasn't just about money, it was about trust, and they'd shattered it. The judge called Brian to the stand. He straightened, his voice calm, but strained. "I thought I was doing right by both my daughters," he said. "The trust was family money. I used it to keep us stable." Stephen didn't let up. "Did Sarah consent to these withdrawals?" he asked, holding up the trust agreement. "Did you inform her as the beneficiary?" Brian hesitated, his eyes flickering. "No," he admitted. "I handled it myself." The courtroom went silent. The judge's pen scratched on her notepad. Stephen handed her a final document, a notarized letter from James, confirming Grandpa William's intent for the trust to support my education and future, not Avery's. This was Sarah's inheritance, Stephen said. Brian Carter violated his duty as trustee. Mom stood, her voice trembling. Sarah, please, let's talk. We didn't mean to hurt you. Her eyes were wet, but I kept mine on the judge. I wasn't here for tears or excuses. I was here for justice. The judge took a long breath and delivered her ruling. Based on the evidence, I find Brian Carter liable for breach of fiduciary duty. The court orders restitution of $200,000 to Sarah Carter, plus $25,000 in punitive damages for willful misconduct. She paused, her gaze sharp. Mr. Carter, your actions were a clear violation of trust law. You will also cover all legal fees. Brian's face went white. Mom gasped, clutching his arm. I sat still, my heart pounding but steady. The gavel struck, and the weight of years lifted off my shoulders. Grandpa's trust was mine again, not just the money but his belief in me. Stephen turned to me, a small smile on his face. We did it, Sarah. You won. I nodded, my voice low. Thank you. For everything. As we left the courtroom, Mom approached, her hands outstretched. Sarah, can we just talk? We're still family. I stepped back, my tone firm. You made your choice, Nancy. You all did. I walked past her, my head high. Brian called my name, but I didn't turn around. Avery hadn't even shown up. They weren't my family anymore. Outside, Alyssa waited in her car, her grin wide when she saw me. You nailed it, didn't you? They're paying back every cent, I said, sliding into the passenger seat. Plus more, she high-fived me. That's my girl. Now what? I looked out the window, the Hartford skyline sharp against the sky. Now I build my life, on my terms. The victory wasn't just the money. It was knowing I'd fought for myself, for Grandpa's legacy. Brian's lies, Mom's silence. Avery's privilege, they couldn't touch me anymore. I was free. A month later, I signed the papers for my new apartment in Hartford's West End. It was small, a one-bedroom with a tiny balcony, but it was mine. The $200 through $1,000 from the trust, plus the $25,000 penalty, covered the down payment and left enough to start my life over. I stood in the empty living room, keys in hand, feeling a quiet pride. This was what Grandpa William had wanted for me. A place to call my own. I spent the first week settling in, painting the walls, a soft gray, and unpacking boxes Alyssa had helped me haul from her place. She'd insisted on carrying the heavy ones, joking about her gym membership finally paying off. This place is perfect for you, she said, setting down a lamp. It's got your vibe, simple but strong. I smiled, grateful for her. Couldn't have done this without you. She waved me off. You're doing it all yourself, Sarah. I'm just the cheerleader. With the apartment set, I threw myself into freelance graphic design. My online course had ended, and my portfolio, logos, website mockups, branding projects was strong enough to start pitching clients. I set up a profile on a freelance platform, and within days I got a message from Kristen Lee Morgan, a local bakery owner, needing a rebrand. Her email was warm but direct. I love your style. Can you design a logo and menu for my shop? I met Kristen at her bakery, a cozy spot called Sweet Haven, filled with the smell of fresh croissants. She was in her late 30s with sharp eyes and a quick laugh. I want something modern but warm, she said, handing me a coffee. Think you can handle it? Absolutely. I said, sketching ideas on a napkin. We clicked instantly, tossing around concepts over pastries. By the end of the meeting, she'd hired me for the full project: logo, menus, even a website. It was my first real client, and it felt like a door opening. Back home, I worked late into the night refining Kristen's logo. My laptop glowed in the quiet apartment, my sketches spread across the table. Every line I drew, every color I picked felt like a step toward the future Grandpa had envisioned. I wasn't just designing for Kristen. I was building a career, something no one could take from me. My phone buzzed, interrupting my focus. The screen showed 35 missed calls, 20 from Nancy, 10 from Brian, 5 from Avery. They'd been calling for weeks, leaving voicemails I hadn't opened. Nancy's messages were long, pleading for a conversation. Brian's were curt, demanding I stop this nonsense. Avery's were short, just her name, like she expected me to call back. I didn't. They'd made their choices years ago, prioritizing Avery's life over mine. I wasn't their fixer anymore. Alyssa came over the next evening, bringing takeout from a Thai place nearby. We sat on my balcony, the city lights flickering below. "Your family still blowing up your phone?" "Huh," she asked, glancing at my screen. "Yeah," I said, stirring my noodles. 35 calls now. I'm not answering." She nodded, her expression firm. "Good. You don't know them anything." I leaned back, the night air cool on my face. It's weird. Part of me wonders what they want to say. But then I remember they had years to say it. Alyssa raised her glass to new beginnings. "And to you, kicking butt." I laughed, clinking my glass with hers. "To that?" The next week, Kristen emailed, thrilled with the logo draft. "This is exactly what I wanted," she wrote. "Can you come by to discuss the website?" I met her again at Sweet Haven, where she introduced me to her staff and showed me her plans for a summer menu. Our meetings turned into regular coffee chats, her stories about running the bakery, mixing with my ideas for her brand. She wasn't just a client, she was becoming a friend. My freelance work grew steadily. Another client, a local coffee shop, hired me for a poster design. Then, a nonprofit reached out for a branding package. I set up a small office corner in my apartment with a desk and a mood board for inspiration. Each project felt like a brick in the foundation of my new life. The calls from my family didn't stop, but they faded into background noise. I blocked Nancy's number after her 21st call. Brian's voicemails grew angrier, mentioning family loyalty. Avery's calls stopped after her 5th, like she'd given up. I didn't care. My world was here now. My apartment. My work. Alyssa's laughter. Kristen's encouragement. I was done looking back. 2 months later, my apartment buzzed with laughter. It was my 24th birthday, and Alyssa had turned my living room into a party zone, string lights draped over the balcony door. A playlist of indie rock humming through a borrowed speaker, and a cake from Kristen's bakery, iced with my name in elegant script. Alyssa invited a handful of friends, some from her art circle, others I'd met through freelancing. They filled the space with chatter, clinking glasses, and stories that made my cheeks hurt from smiling. Kristen arrived with a tray of cupcakes, her grin wide. "These are on the house," she said, setting them on my kitchen counter. "You're officially my favorite client." I laughed, handing her a soda, only because I pay on time. She winked. "That, and you make my bakery look good." The night felt light, like the weight of the past year had finally lifted. Alyssa raised a toaster glass, sparkling under the lights. "To Sarah," she said, "for building a life that's all hers." Everyone cheered, and I felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. These people, friends who chose me not out of obligation but because they saw me, were my new family. We danced, ate too much cake, and swapped stories until midnight. Kristen told us about her first failed attempt at baking bread, and Alyssa confessed to accidentally dyeing her hair green in college. I shared how I'd once spent a whole night redesigning a logo, only to realize the client wanted a different color palette. After everyone left, I cleaned up the apartment quiet again. Alyssa stayed to help, stacking plates in the sink. "You looked happy tonight?" she said, scrubbing a fork. "Really happy." "I am," I admitted. For the first time in a long time, she hugged me, her voice soft. "You deserve it." Alone later, I pulled out Grandpa William's letter from a drawer. I hadn't looked at it since James sent it, but tonight felt right. I unfolded the worn paper, his steady handwriting a reminder of his love. He'd written about believing in my strength, urging me to carve my own path. "You're enough," he'd said. Those words hit differently now. They weren't just about the trust, they were about me standing on my own. I tucked the letter away, my heart steady. Grandpa had seen who I could become long before I did. The next morning, Kristen texted asking me to stop by Sweet Haven to review her new menu designs. I walked through Hartford streets, the spring air warm and sharp. Her bakery was busy, customers lining up for coffee and pastries. She waved me to a corner table spreading out printed mock-ups. "These are perfect," she said, pointing to the clean lines and soft colors. "You're making my business shine." I smiled, pride swelling. Just doing what I love. My freelance work was thriving. I'd landed 2 more clients, a yoga studio and a local bookstore, both thrilled with my portfolio. My apartment's office corner was now a proper workspace with a second monitor and a shelf of design books. Every project felt like a step toward the life Grandpa had wanted for me when I was building brick by brick. I'd heard whispers about Brian through a mutual acquaintance at the bookstore. His real estate business was crumbling. Clients had pulled out after news of the lawsuit spread through Hartford's tight-knit business community. No one trusted a man who'd misused his daughter's inheritance. He'd lost deals, his office space, even his reputation. Part of me felt a flicker of pity, but it faded fast. He'd chosen Avery over me for years. This was his consequence. Avery, I learned, had moved to Boston. The same acquaintance mentioned she'd taken a job at a marketing firm living in a cramped studio, no Tesla in sight. She was starting over just like me, but I didn't care to know more. Her life was hers now and mine was mine. My phone had stopped buzzing weeks ago. The 35 missed calls were the last of it. Nancy's pleas, Brian's demands, Avery's half-hearted attempts. I'd blocked them all, their numbers now just ghosts in my contacts. A final email from Nancy arrived last week, asking for one last chance to explain. I deleted it without reading. They'd had years to choose me to see me. They didn't get to rewrite the story now. Alyssa dropped by that evening carrying a sketchbook for a new project. We were brainstorming a mural for a community center. We spread out on my balcony sketching under the fading light. You ever think about them? She asked, her pencil pausing. Sometimes, I said, shading a corner of the design, but not like I used to. They're not my story anymore. She nodded, her smile quiet. You're writing a better one. I looked out at the city, its light steady and bright. This was my life now, my apartment, my work, my friends, my choices. Grandpa's letter had been right. I was enough. Cutting off Brian, Nancy, and Avery wasn't just closing a door. It was opening a world where I defined my worth. I'd chosen myself, and that was the right choice.